Hi, morning. Speaking after Long and Ginger, my job is much easier because they already gave pretty comprehensive coverage of both data economy and privacy regulation. I'm just going to continue to say something about what we know, from both modeling and data point of view about the data sharing. As Long already spoke very nicely, data economy is already booming and it's already pretty large. And in macro models, data has already been incorporated as a third factor for macro economy, right? Because data has some very nice feature. Data is non-rivalry and may offer increasing return to scale. So it's very important for economists to understand how data work in the economy. But at the same time, data is very different from other factors because data is not there by default, right? Data actually, especially consumer data, actually needs to be shared by consumers, right? And consumers themselves might naturally have concerns about sharing data. So this is, of course, the key motivation for data privacy regulation, which Ginger mentioned, now widely enacted across the world, right? Many countries already put them up. GDPR in the EU, US, 4 states already had it, and China also has a very comprehensive data protection law as well. But what are consumers' privacy concerns? And how do their privacy concerns affect the data sharing? I think these are still open issues. I'm going to say something very briefly about from conceptual side, why do consumers care about privacy, right? So there are 2 dimensions. One is to think of a data privacy concern as some kind of an innate preference, right? People may just by nature be inverse to reveal personal information with others, right? Right? Just just like religion, I don't want to share my things. I don't want people to know anything about myself, right? So this could be as simple as that. But of course, I think there are more practical reasons why people don't want to share the data. So there are so-called instrumental preferences, right? Because data may reveal personal types to others, right? And by revealing your own type, this may benefit you or this may also hurt you, right? Because benefit side, of course, let the producers, sellers know your preferences, right? They can easily find the best match for you, right? So if you log on to Google without signing in under your own name, it's very hard to search anything, right? Because the answer you got, often have nothing to do with what you want. But on the other hand, if you reveal yourself with your previous history, Google can easily find what you want, right? On YouTube, of course, it knows exactly what you have been watching, and without the searching, you already push you also the video you like to watch, right? So make your life much more enjoyable. So this is the advantage of reveal your type. But of course, revealing your type also exposes you to issues, right? So sellers know your reservation value, and you may not get the best price, right? So there's potential for price discrimination. And knowing your type, revealing your personal views about social issues to others may also subject yourself to social discrimination. So this is also a big concern, right? Maybe you don't want to know others to know everything about what you think, right? And there's another concern. Revealing your previous history also expose your vulnerability to firms, right? So, data can be powerful. They can discover all sorts of things even before you know yourself, right? So that also include, you might be addictive to things, right? And you might have problem with gambling. And at the wrong time, when some of this link shows up on your screen, so you might get into trouble, right? So this is another potential concern. Let me quickly mention, so that I've been working on the model related to this. So when individuals have personal weakness, self-control problems, so naturally, protecting data privacy is about protecting your weakness, right? You don't know, everybody has certain weakness, right? You don't want sellers to know that to target you for your potential vulnerabilities. And of course, we can, in data, in decision science, there are all sorts of ways to modeling this, right? So hyperbolic discounting, temptation utility. So we adopted a very convenient tool coming from temptation utility. We can microphone this, and there, revealing your type is basically revealing your data is about revealing potentially sort of your vulnerability, and thus exposing you to potential targeted advertising to your by the kind of temptation good you're particularly vulnerable to. I mean, the model will deliver all sorts of externalities, but I want to mention, I think a sort of more interesting part here is that data sharing could potentially have some nuanced macro trade-off. Of course, better sharing improves efficiency at the average level, but there's this potential inequality because certain people, people with a stronger self-control issue, they're particularly vulnerable to data sharing, vulnerable to externality of others' data sharing. So I think sort of at the macro level, there's this basically a trade-off between better average efficiency and vulnerability of a particular group, the group with sort of stronger self-control problems. I want to use actually remaining time to say a little bit more in the data, what do we know about consumers' data sharing. Of course, there's an extensive literature analyzing this issue and has documented this paradox, so-called data privacy paradox. Alexandra has done extensive work on this and has written a recent review about this. Basically, consumers often state that they are concerned about data privacy in surveys. Yet, it seems that they nevertheless share their personal data often freely or at very small costs, right? Or at very small rewards. So this paradox is interpreted in very different ways in policy discussions. Sometimes they're viewed as, consumer may not be really serious about their data privacy, despite what they say, right? So in that sense, there's this sort of, that's why it's called a paradox. But also sometimes this is interpreted as consumer already give up on protecting their data privacy, right? Because it's so hard to resist. So then it's impossible to protect it anyway. So they basically gonna authorize data sharing anyway. So despite the concern. And of course, there are also some challenges from legal scholars saying that the paradox may not be valid because in surveys, the questions may not be rightly phrased, right? So together with Long and Ouyang, so and staff in Luohan Academy, we have done a survey study actually looking into sort of consumers, how do they share the data on Alipay platform? So this is a simple survey study. As many of you know, Alipay is actually a very large comprehensive platform. Actually, it has millions of mini programs operated by third parties. Each of these mini programs require authorization of sharing personal data before using each mini program. Thus, we observe every Alipay's users' data sharing on Alipay platform with these third-party mini programs. So in July 2020, we did a survey. It's a very simple survey with 12 questions. So there's some simple question like this. I will point to the question F here. It's a simple question, specifically ask them, are you concerned about negative impacts caused by information shared to mini programs in Alipay? So this is a question precisely phrased, right? So, and which we match actually with each respondent's data sharing with third-party mini programs on Alipay. So the response, 46% of them responded very concerned, 39% concerned, and 15% not concerned, right? So you can see sort of there's this nice variation across the three groups here, from very concerned to concerned and not concerned, right? So because the questions are specifically phrased, so it's immune to this concern, right? And then we can compare, right? So across these three groups, how do they share the data? So I think this is the main chart I want to bring to your attention. As you can see, so these are the three groups on the left-hand side here: not concerned, concerned, and very concerned. And we did the survey in July 2020. So for the 1 year before the survey and about the 17 months after survey, we collect data about how many data sharing authorization they agree on the Alipay platform. So you can see that before the survey, 1 year period before the survey, the very concerned group visited on average 16.3 mini programs, authorized data sharing with 11.3, okay? So the concerned group visited 15.5 and authorized 11.5. And not concerned group visited 14.3 and authorized 11.2. You can see the net amount, how many data authorization they grant. It's actually roughly about the same, right? 11.3, 11.5, and 11.2, right? So in that sense, right, despite the very concerned, they say they're very concerned, but in the net, they authorized roughly the same, right? But of course, if you look at the percentage, the very concerned group actually visited more. So they did reject about 25% requests, right? They visited those, they opened it, they decided they're not going to share their data. That means they got kicked out, right? So there's this nice rejection rate here, 25%. So that means they are not really frustrated because they are actually taking active actions, right? Rejecting about 25% of them. But in the net authorization amount is about the same across the three groups. So in that sense, you still see this paradox, right? They say they're concerned, but they authorize roughly the same. So I think it's even more interesting after the survey. So we have another 17 months of period, sort of we see there what happened after, say, right? They are very concerned. So in the post-survey period, the very concerned group visited 33.4 mini programs and authorized 23.8, right? The concerned group visited 32.8 and authorized 24.6, right? And not concerned visited 28 and authorized 20.5. So you can see actually the gap actually become even bigger, right? So the concerned and the very concerned group authorized actually significantly more, even though it's about two more, right? So then the not concerned group, right? So in that sense, it actually got worse over time, right? Right. So we can test this. We can do regression is significant and so on. I'm not going to show you the regression, but trust me, it's significant. And also even more interesting, compared to after versus before, right? So they share more as well. The very concerned group, they shared more, right? So 23.8 versus 11.3 in the pre-survey, right? So that means that despite they being concerned, they're very concerned, over time, actually, they visited more and authorized more, right? So in that sense, this is not an issue that will go away. They're really concerned that you should know you are concerned, you should cut down, right? They're not scaling back down. In fact, actually, they authorize more, okay? So we have also the regression analysis, but due to time, I'm not going to show you. So just we can put it into all sorts of control. We can do the user level analysis or user mini program pair level analysis with controls. So the difference I mentioned, they're all significant. And also we can validate whether the survey-based privacy concerns are valid or not, using whether the other kind of measures of privacy concern, they are valid. In your survey, even though they are noisy at the individual level, but in aggregate, they are reasonably valid, okay? So what happened here? Why would the privacy concerned consumers authorize more data sharing rather than less, right? So of course, I think it's a legitimate concern that consumers may be confused or influenced by present bias and so on, so which has been the emphasis in the literature. But I think these arguments do not help with explaining the increased data sharing authorization over time. Right? In fact, actually after the survey, in the post-survey period, actually this becomes we see even more data sharing rather than less, right? So I want to highlight sort of one key explanation here we have in mind. So over time, it's interesting that actually privacy consumers, they actually use the, one thing, sort of they share the data because they want to use those mini programs, right? So what's nice about here is actually we can actually observe how often they use and how much they use those authorized mini programs. So we find a very interesting pattern. We use sort of several different measures, how they often log into the mini program, how long they stay in the mini program, how many pages they turn on in the mini programs, and so on. Across all these different measures, the concerned, a very concerned group, actually, they tend to use more, okay? So in that sense, this helps to understand why they share more, right? Because they use more, right? Of course, if you have to use more, you have to share your data, right? So this basically sort of, there's this demand side here, which we emphasize, right? It's very nicely coming out of the data here. So despite their concern, they share the data because they want to use it, right? So they're not sharing it because, they don't care. They care, but they still have to use it, okay? All right, so due to the time, let me, I think so the points are very clear. So we do confirm this data privacy paradox is clearly there. But we believe there's a easy explanation for this paradox, right? So the paradox is not because of unreliable response or frustration with protecting data privacy. I know it's complicated to go through this, as Ginger pointed out, but sort of this powerful side here is data sharing also comes with demand for data services, right? Which is sort of the essence of the data economy, right? So basically, privacy concerns are byproduct of data economy. Privacy concerns actually may intensify with the deepening of the data economy, right? Because with more data you share, you're naturally more concerned. But at the same time, I think there's another even stronger side that can kick back is that the even more powerful digital services enabled by data sharing, they also become more and more powerful. And as a result, they may induce consumers to share the data despite their growing concerns. I think so that we have these two sides, both moving, but basically both growing, right? Okay, that's what I want to say. Thank you.